Pluto's in Aquarius, and we're getting first glimpses of new digital dictatorship and great reset agenda on the rise. Watch this video to find out how they're connected. All right, welcome folks. This is Dr. V, and on this channel you get the astrology straight up and unadulterated on everything from the cosmic to the existential. And today I'm going to talk about some social changes and transformations, some news that recently we've been witnessing about freedom of speech and freedom of expression being curtailed in places like Canada and Germany and elsewhere. And I'm going to discuss how these developments, how what we could call potentially the emergence of a new form of digital totalitarianism or digital dictatorship, how the emergence of these measures, how that fits into the big picture of Pluto in Aquarius. Keep in mind, for when we look at these big transits like Pluto in a sign, we're really decoding the cosmic background to the stories that are unfolding in our lives, in culture, in society. We're basically getting the context to the story. We get the backstory to the story, and that allows us to maneuver better. That allows us to understand where things are going to, what's coming next, to strategize better, all of these things. And that's what I'm doing here on this channel. So Pluto in Aquarius, before we understand the significance of this transit, let's decode the meaning of the individual components. Pluto and Aquarius, right? Pluto is a principle of death and rebirth, right? It's the creative destruction. It's Hades, the underground. It's like confronting the deep, dark background of things so that light can come into that deep underground, and eventually through this process, which is always going to be a very intense and transformative process, and you need to die a certain death through this process so that then eventually something new can emerge, right? That's the image of Pluto, okay? Now, Aquarius is the sign where in the 11th sign in the zodiac, right? It's fixed air. It's the sign where we're talking about concrete ideas that dominate society, right? If you know somebody who is Aquarius or who has a lot of Aquarius placements, they always have very fixed ideas about things, right? They kind of sometimes have very unconventional ideas, different ideas, right? They're not going with the mainstream, like they're everything but mainstream, but they really hold on to those ideas, those eccentric ideas that they have. That's their role. That's the role of Aquarius, right? To innovate ideas and then make those ideas eventually dominant for society, right? Now, when Pluto comes into Aquarius, we're talking about a necessary death and rebirth of the socially dominant ideas. Now, the best way to understand what that means is we go back in history and we look at the last time we had this cycle. So because this is a slow cycle, this takes we have to go back a long time. We go back to 1778 to 1800, and we see that that's when we had this the last time, right? And this time, lo and behold, we had a time of big revolutions, the tail end of the American Revolutionary War, but especially the French Revolution, where completely new ideas were brought up, and the ancien régime, the old ideas of monarchy and traditional form of organizing society and all of this, it was replaced with completely new ideas, republicanism, secularism, and so on and so forth, right? And if you go back further in the previous Pluto and Aquarius phases, you'll find that they also were times of great transformation of ideas, death and rebirth of ideas, right? So you had the Protestant Reformation, right? That was a Pluto and Aquarius time, which, in Europe, the Protestantism spread, Calvinism, Lutheranism, and so on and so forth. And even, the Christianization of the Roman Empire fell under a Pluto in Aquarius phase, right? Similar principle. So all of these phases, what do they have in common is that you had the death of a previous regime of ideas, right? And this didn't happen peacefully. This always happened with extreme struggle, extreme kind of darkness, extreme human shadow sides coming out collectively, and then eventually the emergence of new ideas at the end of this cycle. Okay? So now that you understand this image and the archetypal signature, now it will make much more sense to look at some of the recent news that we've been getting about things that are happening and that, would have been completely unimaginable just a couple of years ago, right? Decades ago. Forget about it. Like completely unimaginable. The first thing I want to mention to you is this law that the Canadian government in March announced that they're looking to introduce. It's called Bill C-63, the Online Safety Bill. And this law, it proposes completely draconian measures and penalties for anybody who commits the offense of digital hate speech, right? Or digital hate speech. And then what, it's defined here as basically speaking out against any race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, right? Any of these. Speaking out against any of these things in hatred, with hatred online, can get up to imprisonment for life. Life prison, like murderers, like the worst type of murderers, basically, right? And not even murderers, they're not even, they're let out usually after, they don't even stay for life, right? But basically, speaking out against all of these groups, and obviously, who tells you, who's going to say whether, who's going to determine what counts as hate speech against any of these groups? It's always obviously going to be a group of bureaucrats. So they're setting up an entire office, 3 new offices they're setting up in Canada to protect speech, right? This is a euphemism, right? This is a Orwellian type of euphemism to call this protecting, but in reality, it's to monitor and to control speech, right? And similar things are happening in lots of other countries, in Australia, in Germany, which I'll come to next, right? Lots of places which were bastions of liberalism, supposedly, right? And liberalism supposedly stands for protecting freedom. Now this is being completely overturned with these strange laws that are coming out. Just as an example here, when you are giving people up to life imprisonment for so-called hate speech, right, against these protected groups, what if tomorrow and there's people working on this, I'm not making this up, what if tomorrow they add people here to this list who are pedophiles, right? People who are, basically there's now a new expression for them. I think they're looking to call them minor attracted persons, right? So, and if they add that, if they say this is a sexual orientation or whatever, a gender identity, and then somebody comes and, says that these people should not live or whatever, speaks out from their position some very hard and harsh ideas around these people, this person could get life imprisonment, right? According to this law. So obviously, there's a lot of space here for abuse of this law, and this could go in a completely wrong direction, and it's completely insane when you think about it. The measure, the proportionality is out of whack. So is this really to do with Pluto in Aquarius, right? So we have a look at the astrology to see, whether I can back up this hypothesis. And when you do, you see right away here, so with Trudeau's chart, Justin Trudeau, obviously like the lead character in this story, that he's got this strong, placement here with his Venus and North Node, his North Node, South Node axis, basically the karmic axis, is here in the early grades of Aquarius, and this is just getting currently an activation right now, right? So it's starting to get an activation from Pluto. The activation will get much stronger in the coming years, right? And he's kind of destined to play an important role in this story as it unfolds, with his North Node being in the early degrees of Aquarius. And similarly, if you look at the Canadian chart, right, your Canadian chart, you have here Mercury in 4 Leo. So Pluto is here now. Pluto is going to be transiting here. Actually, let me show you the transit as well so you can see it. So you see here, Pluto is now transiting in opposition. It's still wide opposition, but it's starting to come in. It's starting to come in as an opposition to the Mercury of Canada, right? So from here, from 2 and Pluto opposite Mercury is the archetypal symbol of oppression of speech, right? Pluto is oppressive, right? And Mercury is speech. It's the oppression of speech, right? And this is going to get much more so in the coming years as Pluto then actually moves on in the next couple of years. Are Canadians going to go along with it? Well, there's a lot of hope that that's not necessarily the case. You know, Canada is the quintessential Uranian nation with sun and moon together on Uranus, right? And they're all in Cancer. So, you know, it's a sentimental type of progressivism or rebel kind of nation, right? It's a sentimental rebel nation of sorts. Very polite rebels, but still, right? The sense of freedom is absolutely essential for Canadians. But also there's the progressivism that comes with Uranus. And if progress is now defined as controlling speech as opposed to letting speech be free, then, you know, Canada is destined to be at the forefront of this process. All right, so let me show you another example of something that was in the news recently. And, you know, this was another really crazy thing, which wouldn't have been possible as well just a few years ago, a few decades ago. No way this would have been possible. And I'm talking about something that happened in Germany, where in Germany they were supposed to have a conference on Palestine. And this conference was supposed to be attended by all kinds of people, including the former Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, who is a famous figure in all of Europe, globally actually. He's a leader of the, you know, socialist movement, and he's been a public figure for many years. And he was going to speak at that conference and give a talk for protecting the dignity of Palestinians, for not murdering them, basically, in place of Hamas, you know, because the Palestinian civilians are getting killed there en masse. And what happened is that the conference got prohibited, and himself, Yanis Varoufakis, he got banned from Germany. He got not just banned from Germany from entering the country, he even got banned from participating in any Zoom event, in any online participation, with anything to do with Germany. He got banned, right? So this is like kind of completely crazy next level. And if you look at his speech, right, you can go and search his speech. He published his speech. His speech is not, you know, he's not supporting terrorists. You know, he's not supporting Hamas. He's not supporting anything unsavory or crazy or whatever. He's literally he's there to speak out for, you know, protecting the humanity of everybody, including the Palestinians who are getting killed, you know, like a very moderate speech in every sense, right? Not a crazy radical speech at all, right? And for this, he got banned from the country, completely banned. And he's not allowed to work anymore or to participate in any activity to do with Germany, right? So this does not sound like anything that liberal states would do a few years ago, a few decades ago. And you can tell that something has changed when these kind of events are happening, when freedom of speech, freedom of expression is being curtailed like this. There has been similar things going on in Ireland, in Australia, in a lot of the liberal countries, basically. And to back up the connection that I'm making here with Pluto and Aquarius, I'm going to show you the German chart as well. And you see here, the German chart, it has the axis, Rahu Ketu axis, right here, you can see that exactly as well in the first couple of degrees of Aquarius. And additionally, Germany has the descendant as well here on 4 Aquarius, right? So in the next years, Pluto will be on here, right? So this means on the one hand that first, well, let me show you this. Okay, you can see this here right now. You see Pluto goes out here, goes out a little bit, and then comes back, and then is just going to be there, right? And then Pluto is going to be here on exactly on the descendant as well and on the axis, right? So this means Germany not just is going to play a key role in this transformation, right? Especially in the early phase of the transformation, because the Rahu Ketu, the North Node, South Node, right? It stands for a karmic involvement in social manifestations, right? So this is what it means. In your personal chart, it means something else. In the national chart, it means that this country is going to play a key role on the social level globally in this development, right? Now, Germany is not just going to play a role, an important role in this, but also Germany is going to face an important big adversary in the next few years, right? And this is Pluto on the descendant. But that's another topic. We talk about World War III astrology. The next few years, they're not going to be easy for the European states. But back to the Aquarius transformation that's going on. Basically, these are 2 examples that both fit the emerging image of the early degrees of Pluto coming into Aquarius, right? What did I say before? Pluto comes into Aquarius, the dominant regime of ideas that exists, it starts to go through a process of death and rebirth, and the rebirth comes only towards the end of that cycle. So this is 20 years, right? This is 20 years. We're just entering the early stages. In the early stages, it's far more about the death of the previous cycle, right? And this means that the ideas that govern society until now, liberal democracy, freedom of the market, freedom of speech, all of these things, they're going to undergo a very brutal and harsh and dark process of transformation where a lot of the ruling elites, they're realizing that actually it's not in their interest to have people have free speech. It's not in their interest to have people, be able to travel and have complete access on their own resources and all of these things. Instead, it's more in their interest to have a sort of digital control over people. And obviously, the one group that has worked on this a lot and that has presented the complete plan for how to do this is the World Economic Forum, the group which is until now has been under the leadership of Klaus Schwab, who is himself currently undergoing some health problems, who might be replaced. This is an ongoing development that we'll look at a lot in this channel because the World Economic Forum is so key and so important in presenting the strategies and the plans for the Great Reset agenda, which is a lot about using digital technologies to control people more and to curtail freedoms and to have algorithmic control over people. Now, this being said, it doesn't mean that everything that happens under this long Pluto in Aquarius cycle is only going to be horrific and bad. No, there's also obviously the possibility for the birth of completely new ideas for social organization. And this is strongly connected with decentralization, with new forms of governance, with decentralized organizations, things that are built on crypto and Web3 and blockchain and that entire space. But this will take many, many years to unfold, and it's still very early days. As I said, this is a 20-year cycle. Unfortunately, for us, the coming phase is not one that is easy. Generally speaking, the whole world is going into darker ages. There are metaphysical reasons for that. And this Pluto in Aquarius transit, this early stage where we're going to see liberal freedoms erode in the places that at least had those freedoms still to some extent, the freedom of speech and so on. Other places, they didn't have them, already for a long time. But the places that still had them, they're also going to crack down very hard in the coming time that we're in. And this is a difficult time. We have to be happy that there are still some places and some platforms out there like X where people can speak, and some people who are defending the freedom of speech, people like Elon Musk and others. But overall, it's not a rosy time that we're in, and it's important to prepare yourself for what's to come, which is why I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet, and help me grow this channel by liking this video right now that you're seeing, dropping a comment, telling me what you want to see next, what you're thinking about these developments. All of that helps with getting the algorithm to grow the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next videos where we're going to unlock and decode other important developments of our times. Until then, be well, be blessed.